Leadership is often measured in moments where you may want to act or react emotionally, but you choose strategy instead. Welcome to the Climb Podcast, where we empower women of color in the pursuit of leadership and managerial roles. I'm your host, Felicia Smith, the founder of The Climb. And each week on this podcast, we dive into topics that are often been mystified, but also we pull back the curtain on the workplace realities that women of color face every day in the workplace. And what we do is offer honest conversation, practical insights to really help you to navigate the broken rung, build confidence, and to keep climbing, but to make sure that you're not doing it alone, because the climb is all about us doing it together. Today, we are going to go to part 2 of our series on emotional intelligence. So last week we talked about self-awareness. This week we're going to talk about self-management. So last week we talked about recognizing your triggers and really understanding what your blind spots are and being, really honest with yourself about patterns that you know and you're learning to see about yourself, right? So it's really about learning to see yourself clearly. But awareness, remember, if we're looking at a quad, is only a quarter of the larger equation, because knowing you're triggered and managing your response are two different things. You knowing you're frustrated does not mean you know how to respond to the frustration. And knowing you are angry doesn't mean you know how to lead through the anger, right? Knowing you're disappointed doesn't mean you know how to make strategic decisions while disappointed. And that's really where self-management comes in, because leadership isn't, again, tested when everything is going well. Leadership is tested under pressure when everything isn't going well, when you feel overlooked, when you're frustrated, when you're disappointed, when someone said something that offends you, when your ideas are ignored in a meeting, when someone else gets the opportunity over you, sometimes when you're exhausted, right? And when you're carrying more than you should and you don't feel as valued. These are the moments that reveal whether you're leading your emotions or whether your emotions are leading you. And honey, when I tell you I see so many people in the workplace where their emotions are leading them. So this is super important and a key lesson that everyone has to give, because leadership is often measured in moments where you may want to act or react emotionally, but you choose strategy instead. So let's jump into our first segment, Somebody Should Have Told Me. And in this segment, we talked about all the things that we wish that we knew, right? So something that someone should have told me is that professionalism is not the absence of emotion, right? Professionalism is not the absence of emotion. It is the management of emotion, the ability to be able to control and contain yourself. For a long time, I really looked at leaders as people who didn't really show emotions. And I thought they stayed calm all the time. Like they never got frustrated, they never got upset. But the longer I've led, the more I realize that that's really just not true, right? Great leaders feel everything. And to be honest, to be a great leader, you do have to have feelings. You can't be robotic, right? So you can feel frustration, you can feel disappointment, you can feel anger, you can even feel fear and uncertainty. The difference is you don't allow those emotions to make decisions for you from those emotions, right? So I remember situations where I felt completely justified in my reaction, for various reasons. I could have felt like I was disrespected, overlooked, all the things. Maybe someone questioned my expertise, which that has happened to me, right? And I've worked incredibly hard for something and then watched someone else receive the recognition. And in those moments, I had an emotion, right? I was either annoyed, which is a very common emotion for me, or I felt like I wanted to speak my piece, or I wanted to say what I wanted to say, or I was super frustrated, so I wanted to send a scathing email. or correct the person, or in the sense where I was feeling like I was being attacked, I wanted to defend myself. And I wanted people to know exactly how I felt. And that's how most people feel when their backs up against the wall and they're feeling emotions, they want to get that emotions out. I tell people all the time, your emotions are what your emotions are. You can feel all the feelings, right? Feel them on the inside. Because leadership has taught me, something more important, right? Like, I in the instances of where I was upset because I felt like I was right and that wasn't acknowledged, being right and being effective, these are not the same thing, right? And that lesson in itself changes the way how I think about leadership, because leadership is not about the winning moment, right? It's about protecting the outcome. Like, when you're hurt or you're angry or you're frustrated, your first instinct is relief. Like, I want to release this emotion. I want to, transfer this negative energy, right? We want to say the thing that we're thinking. We want to defend ourselves, to seek justice. But leadership really asks us a different question and requires more of us. And it's not, what do I feel like doing, but what response moves the situation forward? I'm going to tell you, this is key. Not what I feel like doing, but what's going to move the situation forward, because those are not the same thing. They actually can be very different. And most times they are different, and they give you a different outcome. So let's go into the truth is. So let's talk about the truth of these emotions. So the truth is that emotions are data for you. They're not directives. Your emotion is really telling you something, but they shouldn't automatically determine what you do next. Okay. So I am feeling frustrated and I want to blow a gasket. That data is telling me I'm frustrated. And the question I should really be asking myself is, okay, why am I feeling this way? What's the scenario? And then the question, not that I just want to transfer the energy, what do I need to do to move forward? Right? Not, I just need to tell them what I'm thinking, or I just need to, whatever. Because feeling angry doesn't mean attacked. Feeling anxious doesn't always mean that you avoid. But what it really means is you have to assess the emotions and understand what that is. So self management is really creating the space. Right here, we talk about the space between what you feel and what you do, right? This is what you feel, this is what you do, the space in between. So self management is that space that you have to give yourself when you are feeling all the things and all the emotions. Because if not, you end up in a bad situation. So, one of the most unused leadership skills is a pause, right? And that's the moment between the stimulus, which is the emotion or what you're feeling, and the response, the pause. Because in that space is really where your choice lies. It's really where you have the opportunity to make a decision. So if you go stimulus response and you don't stop in the middle, you don't take that pause, then it's just blah, right? And you have given your decision away to the stimulus. And what mature leaders really understand is that not every thought needs to be spoken. Not every email needs to be sent immediately. Not every conflict deserves engagement. Not every battle deserves your energy. And that's one we need to understand, because we only got a limited amount of energy in a day. And we do not need to waste it on things that are not going to yield results that's going to move us forward, right? Because sometimes the strongest message is waiting. It's the pause, guys. It's asking yourself the question, being silent in the moment and telling yourself, I can feel it. I'm going to tell you, when I get super upset about something, even in the workplace, I can literally feel the steam rising. And when I know I'm really upset, I am a big practicer of the pause. And what typically happens is, and me and my sister was having this conversation about no matter what happens, we are people who smile. We're joyful, happy people because we have happiness on the inside. But also that means most of the time we're smiling, whether I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm mad, I just smile. And smile for me is my pause. It gives me the ability to stop think about all the steam that's rising and all the things I want to say, and then figure out what I want to say that's going to move things forward. Because if I know I'm upset about something and I just take the stimulus and respond in a way that's not helpful, I won't move forward. A couple of things can happen, right? So let's give an example. You're in the workplace and someone steals your work. And I think someone told me this story recently. And you know that they are briefing and or giving a speech or whatever, and it is from your thoughts or whatever. You have the opportunity in that moment. I know you're probably feeling angry or like, hey, you stole my stuff. Like, that's not right. That's not moral. You can either respond quick and be like, hey, you stole my stuff, and create a situation, or you can step back and figure out how to say that same thing, but to say it more strategically, or to say it in a way where both the audience and that person knows, hey, I got your number. Something similar like, okay, I know I'm hot. I'm smiling. I wait till the end of the brief and I say, John, that was an awesome brief. And I'm so glad that you were able to take what we talked about in the slides that I gave you and present that so eloquently. I'd like to add da 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 da. Right? So now everyone knows those were your slides, those were your ideas. Now, if you took that same scenario and as soon as John started briefing, you were like, John, those are my slides. Like, man, what you doing? Or hey, why are you stealing my slides? You just a thief. Da, 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 da. And it becomes accusatory. Now you lose the room in letting them know that these are all your ideas. Now they're focused on the delivery. So the self-regulation really gives you the opportunity to fix the delivery and figure out how you want to move forward. Because the pressure of a moment doesn't create your character, right? It reveals your character. So whatever's in there, in that moment's going to come out. And so depending on how you want to be depicted, you have to give yourself a pause. Because when pressure shows up, you have to ask yourself, who do you become, right? Do you become defensive? Do you withdraw? Do you over control? Do you shut down? Do you become reactive? Those patterns matter because it helps you to understand stress and how we tend to default to habits rather than intentions. Okay. And what I'm talking about in terms of that strategic pause is to understand your intentions and how you want to move forward. And intention, people use intention a lot, but it's such a more powerful word because intention really means I'm deciding the narrative, the messaging, what I want people to know. And then I'm trying to articulate that. What is my intention in having this conversation? So if I feel like someone has done something in the workplace to me and I'm upset about it, I will ask myself, so why is this important to you? Okay, why are you upset? What do you want the person to know? So if you say everything that's in your mind right now, what do you think is going to be the outcome? And will that outcome align with what your intention is? If your intention is to feel better by me letting the emotion come out, am I going to feel better, or I'm going to feel like, you know what? I should have took a pause. That wasn't even the right time, right? And so if we're not aware of the habits or the things that we naturally want to do, then we're going to let the stimulus and the response go psh, without a pause. And so for us, as women of color, Black women, self-management often carries this additional layer because many of us know our emotional responses are judged differently. We've seen situations where passion is perceived as aggression, directedness is perceived as an attitude, advocacy is perceived as confrontational or confrontation. And while that reality isn't fair, it does make our emotional regulation even more important. Not because we have to suppress ourselves, because I'm not telling you to suppress or to be this thing where you don't say what you mean, but you need to be able to remain in control of your narrative. Again, what is your intention? What do you want to come across? So the goal isn't for you to be silent and just to
eat it in or just take it in, because I know plenty of people who've said like they've taken in years of microaggressions and bad workplaces, and it has physically made them sick. So the goal is not just to take it in, the goal is to create intention and strategy, right? One emotional reaction can take minutes with consequences that can last for years and years and years. That's why leadership maturity really isn't measured by whether you feel emotions, it's measured by how you manage them, right? So, what do you do with all this? You know, you got the emotions. We know that there's a stimulus, there's a response, and in between, we should be looking at the pause, right? So, let's move into our final segment, another rung mended and climbed. Okay, so here are 3 practical ways that you can strengthen your self-management. If you're a person who's just like, listen, this is tough. Like as soon as it hits me, I'm ready to go. This is what I want you to do. Number 1, when you feel that heat to begin to rise, or maybe that hair on the back, don't look at the back of my neck, y'all. My hair's doing a little something this week. I'm going to get it together by next week, I promise. But when you feel that hair begin to rise in the back of your neck, before responding, ask yourself a question. Why am I actually feeling? Or what am I actually feeling? I said, why? Well, why am I feeling this way? Yes, but what am I actually feeling? Not what happened, not he did this thing or she did this thing. What am I feeling? Is it anger? Is it disappointment? Is it frustration? Ask yourself that question first. What am I feeling? And then after you have went through anger, disappointment, embarrassment, what that feeling is, fear sometimes it is, frustration, then you're able to really name what it is, and it is less likely, and you're less likely to be controlled by it. If you can name the thing, then it's hard for it to control you, because now you've identified what it is, right? So if you're real angry and you feel it, and you just let it get out because it's a beast, then it'll just like go from stimulus to response. But if you can name it first and say, you know what, I'm feeling real like frustrated, then now you have control, because now you know the thing it is and you can control your response. The second is you want to practice a delayed reaction. So, not every situation requires an immediate response. And sometimes leadership looks like sleeping on the email, taking a walk, giving yourself time to think, creating distance between the emotion and the decision. Because clarity really comes after the emotion settles. When you're in it and you're feeling it, sometimes it's even hard for you to process. That's why we find some people say, hey, I don't want to even have this conversation right now. Let's circle back for tomorrow, right? Something I will sometimes do is, if I'm feeling an emotion and I don't agree, or I feel that the conversation is about to get contentious and it's going to create an emotion for me, I will say, hey, we are not on the same page today. I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying we're not here today. Let's try again, right? It's the ability for me to push pause and get clarity before we let out any more emotions. Practice 3, focus on the outcome. So you felt the feeling, you took a pause, you got to ask yourself, what outcome am I trying to achieve? Because if your response doesn't move you closer to an outcome, then what was your response? Just an emotion being released. What was the purpose? Yeah, you may feel better, or actually you may feel embarrassed or something else, because an emotional release and leadership are not the same thing, right? And listen, I am not saying that all of us haven't experienced moments where we've had emotional releases. I have had emotional releases where I'm like, hey, I got to give it. And there are times, which people don't talk about, where it's warranted. I think sometimes people will play in your face until you give them a response, right? And so every now and then I got to give you the response you were looking for so you can stop playing in my face. But again, that's my outcome. I go into that thing knowing I'm about to give you a little emotion because I need you to do X, Y, Z. But it has to be intentional. It has to be strategic. You got to understand the stimulus and then understand your outcome and then know what your response is. And so if you are giving energy, you got to know that that's what you really want to do and how that's going to support whatever your outcome is. So this week, I want you to pay close attention to one emotional trigger that you have, just one. Notice when it shows up, notice how you normally respond, and then notice what's the story you tell yourself in that moment. So what do you tell yourself about the emotion that you are experiencing? Then ask yourself, what would a strategic response look like, right? What does an outcome of this emotion that I want to have? Okay. Because leadership is not about suppressing your emotions, right? Or being silent. It's about understanding them well enough that they don't control your decision making, that you don't lose decision space because emotions just driving you. Because you are allowed to feel angry. You are allowed to feel disappointed. You are allowed to feel frustrated. You're allowed to feel hurt. But the real question is, I felt all of those things, or one of those things, or two of those things. What do I do next? What do I want to do with it? Because your leadership is often measured in moments where you want to react emotionally, but you choose strategy instead. Because what we don't talk about is your emotions are a part of your leadership. So no one expects you to be a robot, but they should never be in charge of your leadership. Your emotions are a part of your leadership, but they should never be in charge of it. That's the podcast, guys. If you know anyone who is thinking about, okay, last week, or you talked to them about self-awareness, now they have to learn self-management, or you're like, oh, I didn't think about self-management. Or when people talk to me about emotional intelligence, I didn't even know anything about this self-management thing. This is phenomenal. If you think it's phenomenal, share it with another woman who needs to understand it too, and how she moves in regular life, in work, and all those things. And I want you to remember, we are not just climbing careers, we are building ladders. Until next time, keep climbing, keep striving. See you next week.
Thanks for tuning into the Climb Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on wherever you listen to podcasts. For updates and behind-the-scenes content, make sure you're following us on Instagram and LinkedIn at Join the Climb. Until next time, keep climbing and keep thriving, sis. See you next episode.